Great. Okay, welcome to the Safe System Assessment course. And you can see on the title there, Safe System Principles and Assessment. We've got to cover off a few of the principles of the safe system in order for us to be able to do those assessments. We'll get into that shortly, though. My name's Ken Beer. I'm the Principal Engineer at Safe System Solutions, and I'll introduce myself a little bit more shortly, and I'll introduce Marissa as well as we get to it. So I asked Marissa to hit the record button. The reason we record the sessions is if anybody has to miss a session for some reason, they can watch the recording and catch up that way. And also, if you want to go back and review something that was said, a case study or the like, you can view the recordings. So the recordings will be made available to you sort of 24 hours or so after the session. Give a little content warning. So we will show some road crash scenes, nothing really overly graphic, but just something we're trying to learn from and understand what went wrong and what we can do to lessen the chance of that happening in the future or lessen the severity of that. Now, Marissa, introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit how people can interact.
Yes, thanks, Ken. Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Garusto. I am training coordinator here at Safe System Solutions. I work very much behind the scenes, helping you all get enrolled and into the training courses. So thanks for joining today. It is a webinar format today, so we can't see you, we can't hear you. So you're free to wear whatever you like behind the scenes there. We can't see, but please interact with us via the chat. We welcome all of your questions and comments throughout the session. So I'll monitor the chat throughout the session just so we don't miss any of your questions you might have. If you do have any specific questions you'd like to ask, we do have the chat function, or we also do have the Q&A function down below. Either or, whatever you prefer. I'll monitor in the background and make sure we get all of your questions answered, and I'll shoot any, I'll stop Ken along the way and get him to address any questions you have. If you would like to speak, you are able to speak. We do have the raise hand function. You are most welcome to raise your hand, and I will allow you to speak if you'd like to have a chat to Ken or ask a question or something in particular. So we do have that function. Just press the raise hand button and we can allow you to speak there. And speaking of, we do have someone that's already raised their hand. I'm not sure if you wanted to chat or not, or if it was maybe just a bit of a click of a button, but we've got DP Atman.
Yeah, I think
cool
it might
name.
have been trying to look for the emojis, the wave, and accidentally hit the raise hand button. But we,
if you do want it to chat, let us know, and I can allow you there. But yeah, so I'm here in the background for any of your logistical issues or admin questions that you might have. If you do have any IT issues throughout the session, usually the best thing is just to leave the webinar and then join back in. That usually fixes most things, or sometimes a good old reboot usually does the trick if it's anything too tricky. If you do miss any of the slides along the way or any of the content, all of the PDFs of the presentation are available on our learning management system, which I'll talk to you about shortly. So yeah, you can access any of the slides and follow along there. Oh, speaking of, they're our learning management system. Hopefully you would have all received our emails with your login details. I hope you've all had a chance to pop in. I see some of you already have and given us a bit of an intro and said hello. So thank you for that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you missed the emails or you didn't receive your LMS login details, please let me know. I will resend them to you. You do need access to this, to our beautiful management system in order to complete the course. It houses all of our resources that you'll need, and tasks and assignment tasks and little things here and there that you will need to complete this course successfully. So please reach out if you don't have access to that or you're having any issues getting in, and I can help you out there. Also with the chat, I did just sort of mix. If you'd like to speak to, there is a little function there. You can speak to everyone, or you can speak to just the hosts and panelists, myself and Ken. You're welcome just to chat to me if you'd like to ask me something in private, or you can speak to everyone if you're just sharing your general comments on all the content that Ken is covering, or if you have a question. So yeah, there's just a little function there. Yes, I see someone has requested, but I'll do that, not a problem. I think I covered everything, Ken.
Yeah, good. Just reiterate, you need access to the learning management system. Now you'll see Marissa's email address there, training@safesystemsolutions.com.au. Any questions you have throughout the whole course, shoot them through to that. They will go to the right person and they will help you. So thank you. Now, you have a few different presenters along for this journey. So I'll be leading the course. And my contact details are there. Also, down the bottom here, a little QR code to my LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect with me, that'd be great. I share road safety engineering, road design, safe system assessment, road safety audit content. My colleague Max McCardle will also jump in and present some of the sessions, and his contact details are there as well. Now, a couple of things to keep you engaged, hopefully. So Wally the Wombat. Marissa, you want to talk about Wally?
Yeah, that's our good little friend Wally. Wally is going to appear in a number of the slides during the session, and that's our little way of keeping you engaged and looking at the screen and perhaps not getting your work done on the side or finishing your other reports and all that kind of thing. So keep an eye on the screen and keep an eye on Wally, and do a bit of get a scrap piece of paper, and you'll need to count how many times you see Wally throughout the session, because it is going to be a part of the quiz at the end of the module. So is this one included, Ken? Is it? Are we on numbers?
Not included. So your Wally count's 0, but look out for Wally the Wombat signs as we tick along. And Marissa's in the prize pit there, so we'll give out some prizes. And I see somebody in the chat's already happily received their little welcome pack. So you know how we will get the prizes to you at the end. You'll receive another pack if you happen to pick up any prizes along the way. You get prizes for answering questions, asking good questions, volunteering for case studies, and Marissa runs a little bit of trivia 3 minutes or so before the official kickoff, and could be general knowledge trivia, road trivia, but a chance to win a few prizes there before we kick off.
And just on that, if just with your name that you've got on the webinar that you've set, if you'd like to, if you've got a little nickname happening or something that I may not be able to identify you with, if you'd like to change it to your name or your full name or some kind of initial, just so I know who you are. If you do win a prize and I may not know who you are, that's all. So help me out that one.
So we have a competency benchmark for this course. You need to attend 4 out of the 5 live webinars, and of course watch the recording of the one you miss if you have to miss one. We like you at all 5 of the live webinars. If for some reason you can't make a second one, get in contact with Marissa and discuss that. Satisfactory completion of all set tasks. We've got quizzes, assignments, and bits and pieces, and our competency benchmark sits at 80%. So it is high, but we don't hide away from that. It's important that you have a base level of understanding of safe system assessments. Now, I always say, if you fail the course, I have failed, and I don't like failing anything. And so if you are struggling at all, reach out and get some one-on-one coaching. If you can't understand some of the concepts, you get 3 attempts at everything. So if you don't do well on your first attempt and you don't understand why you're getting things wrong, that is when you really need to start getting some one-on-one coaching and ensure that you understand the topic. So reach out for that. We're here to support you. Now, Marissa, I'm going to start off with a little bit of content. I want to contextualize something, but please, if anybody has any questions about the logistics, the management, the running of the course, pop it into the chat, and Marissa will get back to you on that. But I'm going to jump into a few things. Thanks, Marissa. I just wanted to contextualize safe system assessments within road transport projects, because I think a lot of you have probably heard of road safety audits. Some of you probably are road safety auditors, do road safety audits, or have had road safety audits done on your projects. They've been around a long time. And one of the things people will often say about safe system assessments is, oh, I don't need safe system assessment. We've got a road safety audit done, or we're doing a road safety audit. Well, yeah, I'll explain the difference as we tick along. Another thing is that design review, and people saying, well, no, we've got an independent design review done and we've checked all of that. And there's a bit of overlap between road safety auditing and design review. There's certainly things that sit outside of each. Safe system assessments sort of, again, have this part of covering what's in a road safety audit, part of what's in design review, but a lot of stuff that sits outside of it, from what is being looked at, how it's presented, and what it's used for. Safety and design is another one that comes up where projects will say, oh, no, we do safety and design. That covers everything. Well, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't. I mean, it covers a lot of important stuff. It's focused on the occupational health and safety aspects of building infrastructure, maintaining infrastructure, decommissioning infrastructure. But there's certainly things associated with safe system assessments that sit outside that. And the last one I pop up is DDA compliance, the Disability Discrimination Act, and are we building things that everybody can use, be it vision impaired, in wheelchairs, or the like. Again, that's a separate process, some overlap. But I just wanted to contextualize things, because they're often questions people ask. What is the difference? Why are we doing this? Surely this is all covered in other assessment techniques, and I'll dig into what sits outside here as we go. I want to acknowledge the different custodians of the varied lands on which we're running this training. We have representatives, or we have participants from all across Australia. Certainly this is safe system assessments are something that has a lot of governments have committed to, and people are getting involved in safe system assessments. So paying respects to traditional custodians of the many lands and any present on this course. Okay, by the end of this module, we're going to have unpacked a little bit about the principles and elements of the safe system. Now, some of you are probably saying, oh, how many times have I heard that? I may give you some slightly different aspects to that. It may be a little bit of a refresher for some of you. We're going to delve into kinetic energy thresholds for different crash types. And that is integral to safe system assessing, is to be able to unpack and analyze kinetic energy. We're going to explain the difference between traditional approaches and the safe system approach, and we'll jump into some best practice around behavioural change and vehicle safety interventions, which if you're an infrastructure person, may not be something that you've looked at in detail before. Certainly as a road user, you probably have thought about these things, but we'll contextualize that, and we'll also talk about speed and speed management. There's a Wally. Wally counts 1. No more help from me. Okay, so the safe system is something that across all levels of government, well, across federal government and all states and territories have committed to the safe system approach to road safety. Local governments sort of within that have committed. Some have explicitly put that into their strategies, and others are sort of running along with this. But there is no debate as to whether we are operating with a safe system approach to road safety. Okay. But the real question for me has always been, okay, I understand the principles of the safe system, and I will reiterate those, but how do we actually apply this on the ground in a project? Now, I'm a project engineer. I work on infrastructure projects, right? And to take these high-level philosophical, fluffy statements that politicians love to make, and then to actually make decisions on the ground in our projects, that's challenging. And we always needed some way to translate fluffy policy to actual on-ground action. And that's really where safe system assessments have come into play. just delving a little bit more into that, safe system assessments then have become something that jurisdictionally have, there are commitments now made because at a high level, states have committed to the safe system approach to road safety. And then they've said, we need to ensure this is applied at project level. How do you do that? Well, we assess and ensure that it's done through an assessment technique. So I've just popped this diagram in to say, you know, what are the specific requirements from different jurisdictions for safe system assessments? Certainly Queensland in the TMR road safety policy has said safe system assessments will be done on all infrastructure projects. New South Wales in the recent release has said that a similar at feasibility, functional design and detailed design stages of infrastructure projects, safe system assessments will happen. Victoria's got some specific dollar criteria, dollar value, total estimated cost of project criteria, which is the same as South Australia. The territories and Tasmania sort of doing bits and pieces around safe system assessments. Western Australia, completely different, doing their own thing. It's very different. Some people in Western Australia are utilising the safe system assessment approach, but the government is not sort of actively integrating that into their infrastructure decision-making protocol. Happy to answer questions as we go around that. But the safe system as a philosophy, as a way to operate road safety, the transport perspective, has been around for a while. Now, just to give out a few prizes, get things going. Anybody can tell me what year did the Australian federal government commit to the safe system approach to road safety? Have a guess. You're not marked on anything that happens in the live session. Yeah. As after the live session where you do your quiz, that's part of the marking. So you can freely guess, pop it into the chat, have a guess. What year do you think that might have happened? And we'll give a prize to the person who can get closest. Here we go. Got some guesses coming in. Well done. That's good. Okay, Marissa. Well, it's going to be over to you to find out who was the closest to 2004 was where the federal government formally committed. Now, I was in the Victorian government at the time in the Road Safety Department, and I was sitting in a number of the different Austroads workshops and working groups where we were taking the Vision Zero sustainable safety philosophy out of Europe and trying to say, well, how does that work in Australia? What can we do? And we started off by developing this diagram. And right at the center of this diagram is human tolerance to physical force. It's an interesting way to start thinking about the management, the design, the operation of a road network, a road and street network. I always want to include streets in there because we're thinking about roads, streets, paths, any road-related areas. Human tolerance to physical force. That's interesting. I'll come back to that. So that was at the center. And then we said, well, what are the levers we have to pull here? We've got the vehicle and the safety features of the vehicle. We've got the speed and the speed of travel, and we've got the road and the roadsides. And they're what we have to play with within the system to make this a safe system. And then, you know, sitting in this Austroads boardroom area, it's sort of the group split in a sense. One group said, hey, I think we're missing something critical to creating a safe system, and that's safe humans. And the other side was saying, well, no, the humans are not going to be safe. That's a given. Humans fail, they make mistakes, they take risks, they do stupid things. Like, that's just part of being human. We need to actually create a system that accounts for all that and is impenetrable to the mistake-making and failures of humans. And so then there was all this, you know, argy-bargy debate and everything like that. And at that time, back in 2004, this sort of square was put around the system that said, okay, alert and compliant road users. Now, that played out for a little bit of time over a couple of years and then was generally thrown out by most jurisdictions. Because of that. Because that was the absolute easiest get out clause for everybody. Now, I've done hundreds of in-depth fatal crash investigations, serious injury investigations in my time. And in every single one of them, I found a driver or a rider or a walker who was either not alert or compliant. It's the easiest thing to do in road death and serious injury. There's always somebody who's failed. Okay, I shouldn't say always, like there's a very small percentage of time there has been catastrophic vehicle malfunction failure or road malfunction failure. But yeah, we do not progress anywhere by saying, well, you can only survive our road transport system if you are 100% alert and 100% compliant all of the time. Because that's not a road system that is created for humans. So anyway, all the jurisdictions then started creating their own safe system diagrams, and they, you may identify the one that your jurisdiction uses there. They all went with circles, and I'll utilize this one for simplicity for what we're going to do. Not to say the others aren't good, but I just thought I'd use this one. So at the center, we're still thinking about humans and human ability to withstand force, human failure, just being human, and that this transport system needs to be safe for humans. And out here, you see some principles. People make mistakes. That is absolutely squarely acknowledged in the safe system as a principle, that we're going to have mistake making out there. We need to acknowledge that and design for it and manage for it and operate for it. We need to understand how much force the human body can handle before serious injury or death occurs. And this one, shared responsibility, is often misunderstood. Shared responsibility is associated with us as system designers. So this is to say, we cannot blame the individual road user for their failure. We need to say, right, why has our system failed and why has it resulted in death or serious injury? What can we change in the system? The misunderstanding of this is people go back to, oh, well, you have to have humans being safe, being perfect in order to get a safe system. That's not the intention of shared responsibility. So we've got levers to pull. We have the vehicles themselves. We've got the roads and roadsides. We've got the speeds. We do have the road users, and the safe system is not saying that we will not continue to work to try to get the best out of humans that we possibly can, right? But it's understanding the limitations of that. Okay, even the best humans are going to make mistakes, and they will continue to make mistakes. So there it is, some of the key principles there, which I've already discussed, but I am going sort of fundamentals of safe system first before we launch into then how do you actually assess a proposal or an existing bit of road or something else for alignment with these principles. And that's the safe system assessment process. Okay, I'm going to talk about safety culture. I should mention that I'll give you a little stretch break at halftime, and you'll be able to fill up a coffee or water or the like. But let me talk to you a little bit about safety culture. And this is general safety culture, and I'm going to take you out of road and street transport, and I'm going to put you into another industry, and we're going to go into manufacturing. And let's talk about the manufacturing of widgets, sort of widget production. And we've got factories back in the day, and they're fairly open systems. So people are coming and they're given a bit of training, but then they're told to go in and work. And kids might be employed to clean the machines at different times, and people might go out and have a few beers at lunch and come back and use continue on their work. And everybody understood it was a dangerous environment, right? And they were told how to do things. Don't put your hand in there. Watch out for that. Watch out for this bit that, that could crush you, right? And then they were told, okay, you understand it's high risk in here. Now you have to operate safely. So pushing the safety to an individual in an unsafe environment is what we call a pathological safety culture. You elevate then up to a reactive safety culture, and that's where the machine in the factory that's ripped off 3 people's arm or is crushed a few people to death. They look at it and they say, okay, we've got to change something here. This is not working on this machine, and let's put a guard on it, or we'll stop different bits of it working, or some other interventions. All right. And then that happens. And then there's another machine, and, that happens over there. And then you go and treat that one. That's reactive safety culture. Then the economists get involved, and they come in and they look at the factory and the other factories that this company owns. And they say, well, we've actually done some calculations here. We've worked out how much the death and the serious injury is costing you from a widget production perspective. And, because you have to shut down the machines to pull out the body parts and the like, and you have to, that reduces production. You have to pay money out to the families of the people that have been killed, and all that associated costs in widget production. We've worked out that there's a cost to this, and we've worked out that actually we can put these interventions in. And they will cost money, but in the end, we will get more money in return for more widget production and less payouts than it's going to cost us. So, maybe if we invest £30,000, it was pounds back in the day, we'll get £90,000 of increased widget production over the next 10 years. And then they come up with this thing called a benefit cost ratio, and it's a benefit cost ratio of 3. Every pound invested returns £3. So that's when we're calculating what is optimal in terms of investment, with just the right amount of people killed and seriously injured to make it worth it. Then you elevate up from that to what we call a proactive safety culture, and that's where safety sets the precondition for widget production. So you have to have a safe environment, and then you can produce widgets up to that. Now, exactly what you point as a safe environment is a cultural mindset, essentially, right? But it is a very low risk tolerance there. And say, no, if we can't do that within that safe environment, widget production stops until we get back in that safety envelope. And then when you have a safety culture that is a proactive safety culture, you need to continually invest in maintaining that safety culture from a asset perspective and infrastructure and all the machines and everything like that, but also through having that safety culture needs continual investment in the culture. Now, of course, you've been now thinking about this from a road and street transport perspective and thinking, where do we sit? Well, we absolutely have pathological aspects of our safety culture in roads and streets, where we hand licenses to young drivers. We tell them it's incredibly dangerous out there and that they have to act safely, and safety is their responsibility. We have reactive, where we go out and we look at those black spots or those fatal sites, and we fix it, right? And then the lightning strikes somewhere else on the network and somewhere else on the network. And we go out and we're fixing these. Benefit cost ratios and transport economics is a huge part of the way we think about road safety, in terms of, is that a good investment or not? And really what we're saying here is, what's an acceptable number of our community we kill in order to move people around in the way we've been doing it for the last 50 years, 100 years. Okay? But we do have aspects of proactive safety culture or safe system thinking that from a philosophical perspective that we've seen play out, where I'll give you a few. I'll give you one example. I think school speed zones are a great example of proactive safety culture thinking. Okay, there's little aspects we can need to improve, but the reason I say that is it's safety interventions that are not pathological. They're not reactive. They don't only go in where kids have been killed and seriously injured. If you undertake benefit cost ratio calculations on school speed zones, they are not a good investment, right? Under our traditional transport economics models, they are a bad investment, right? But the safety of the road user is paramount. Okay, and then we operate the envelope within, operate the roads within that. The reason they're a bad investment, and I say that, is that traditional transport is so archaic and so unethical, in my opinion. But anyway, it's essentially the way you work out a benefit cost ratio on school speed zones is as follows. You go, okay, let's take the number of vehicles that travel through school speed zones and work out the time it costs them. Instead of going 60, that they go 40 for that distance. Or instead of going 70, they go 40 or whatever it is, right? And you work out the time that they're at and the amount of vehicles, and you multiply that all out across all these school speed zones. You get this pool of time, right? That it's costing the community. Then you multiply that by the average productivity rate set by the Bureau of Transport Economics or whatever, which is about $88 an hour for an Australian. And you multiply all of that time by $88 an hour and you get this big cost, right? Plus then you've got your physical infrastructure, but they're minor costs compared to what that spits out, cost of signs and electricity and those sort of things. Then you work out, well, what's the benefit of this? And the benefit, the way they do that is they simply put a dollar value to human life and they say, how many lives will this save? And you work out, well, okay, there's, this many people have been killed and there's this risk and this is going to reduce that risk by this much. And basically what it gets down to is that there's not enough kids being killed to make this a good economic investment. But how grotesque is that? Like, we just do not accept that. But we absolutely seem to be very happy with that for a lot of the rest of the road network. Now, that's interesting to unpack why that is. Kids obviously hold this very special thing in road safety and in protection in general that we can leverage off. But it's really interesting to understand that. So that's a good example of proactive safety culture. Just think about it from a principles perspective. Okay, I'm going to ask you a little quiz now. And the way this is going to work, a quiz will shortly pop up on your screen. And you're not being marked on this. It's just for you to interact to do something. I'm going to ask you one question at the start here about the principles of the SAFE system. And then the second one, you haven't been asked this, but I want you to have a guess. And it's something a little bit out of what we've been talking about, but have a guess at it and have a think about it. And we'll get back into it. So hopefully, Marissa, the poll will pop up. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, here it is. Let's go. I'll give you a little bit of time to have a go at this. Now, if a poll didn't pop up on your screen there, don't get stressed. Occasionally a firewall or something blocks it. And we will, I'll talk through these after. Don't worry, you can, you have lots of other opportunities to interact. But I do see some answers coming in. Maybe type in the chat if you aren't seeing a poll on the screen, just so we're aware of that. Give it another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's end that poll. Let's share the results. Have a look. All right. Well, most of you are very much on that. I'm looking. Okay. We understand that aiming at no mistakes on the road is not something that's feasible because humans are still using the system, interacting with the system, making decisions around the system, and humans fail. We look to minimize and manage mistakes. That's it. Get that in your mind. Minimize and manage mistakes. Usain Bolt. Oh, why on earth am I asking a question about Usain Bolt and speeds Usain Bolt runs at? Well, the answer to the question of what speed did he cross the finish line in his world record 100-meter sprint is 44 kilometers an hour, something around 44 kilometers an hour. That's the speed he crossed the finish line. If you did a little back of envelope calculation between, 100 meters, 10 seconds, 9 point whatever it was, and you probably came up with 34 because to add in the acceleration. Or would you have come up with higher? Anyway, it doesn't matter. 44 kilometers an hour. Why am I asking that? I'm going to get rid of that. Let's get rid of that poll. Okay. Well, I want you to imagine that you park a Toyota Hilux at the end of Usain Bolt's lane. And he comes running down there at 44 kilometers an hour. And then, bang, he hits that Hilux at 44 kilometers an hour. Will he survive? Well, the answer to that question is yes. Oh, most likely. He is an absolute hulk of a human, can withstand some good force. But there is a general correlation between a human's maximum running speed and their ability to withstand striking a solid object at that speed. You can, old people can't get up to fast speeds like Usain Bolt speeds, nor can they handle that type of force. You can test your own biomechanics of injury tolerance level by running at full speed at a tree, and you should be just getting close to what you will, you'll certainly hurt yourself in the short term, but you will most likely, the theory says, you will recover over time to be able to lead a normal, healthy life at your maximum running speed into a tree or something like that. So this becomes an interesting one to understand biomechanics of injury. This is my little way of describing biomechanics of injury. Other people describe it in other different ways. Some people talk about, heights that humans understand, like they are scared of certain heights. And there's a reason they're scared of certain heights, because we know that the speed that we will achieve when striking the ground is beyond tolerable levels. So it's an interesting way of sort of understanding that. But we need to understand this sort of, well, what forces can we handle as humans under different scenarios in order to make informed decisions about management of the road network? So here's a graph that many of you will have seen before, but it's a passenger vehicle striking a pedestrian. Now, okay, this came about, like a whole lot of real world crashes and, all sorts of dots around everywhere. This is a trend line, okay? Yeah, you'll get circumstances that pop out here and there in different places. And there's Usain Bolt sort of up there on the curve, but this includes old people and kids and others, so it's a general curve for the population. But what you can see there is that over this side, we've got death probability. The probability a strike at a certain collision speed will result in death. Now, this is not speed limit. This is just we're just physics, biomechanics of injury here. Okay, what speed struck by a passenger vehicle are we expecting a member of our population to be killed or killed? So you can see there around the 20, 30 kilometers an hour, it's a high chance that our member of our community survives, up around your 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour, it's highly likely that death is the result. And this 30-kilometer point becomes a really fascinating one as to it goes really bad really quickly after that point. It's the exponential kick-up point. That's what we're designed for. Okay, we're designed to run into stuff like that. He's all right. He broke a few ribs. He came back the next year, won the gold medal. We can survive that, right? When we get to speeds much higher than that, or even, not much higher than that, just a bit higher than that, we get into very serious injuries very quickly. Now, we have this information for a few other sort of crash types. Here, we have the bullet vehicle and the target vehicle. The bullet vehicle does the damage in a crash when you're sort of analyzing crashes. Bullet vehicle speed and target vehicle. So the target vehicle could, just pull out from a side road or the like, and the bullet vehicle strikes at a right angle. And we see that, 30, 40, 50 kilometers an hour, generally survivable. Up around that sort of 80, 90, 100, it's unsurvivable for the occupants of the target vehicle, or the driver's side in this crash type. And we see that exponential kick up around that 50 kilometer per hour mark. And finally, head-on crashes. And if we say 70 kilometers an hour is the exponential kick up, which it is, that's 70 kilometers per hour for each vehicle. Okay? Now, admittedly, this is like two vehicles of the same mass head-on crashing, both traveling at 70. So the force to the individual occupant of each vehicle is 70 kilometer per hour crash, because they're going from 70 to 0, right? It's the same as running into a brick wall at 70. But the vehicles, the front of the vehicle is exceptionally well engineered, well, pretty well engineered for crashes. So crumple zones, airbags, seatbelts, all working for that frontal crash impact. That's why we can get a bit more speed out of this one. If you're sitting there questioning my physics, going, oh no, isn't that 140 kilometer per hour crash? No, it's a 70 kilometer per hour crash. There's a great Mythbusters episode that actually that unpacks this, crashes vehicles into each other, then into brick walls with accelerometers, and proves this point. But you're thinking about the speed deceleration, or the velocity deceleration of the occupants of the vehicle. Yeah, if it was a tiny little smart car traveling in at 70 and a road train coming the other way at 70, and they got pushed back at 70, that's 140 kilometer per hour force crash on the smart car driver. Absolutely. Throughout the slides here, when you download the PDFs, you'll be able to click on these Safe System snippets. It'll take you to a little bit more information on the topic, maybe some videos or these sorts of things, so you can play along as you go. So that line there, where things go really bad really quickly after it, that's a really important point for us as we think about safe system application on our road system and our street system. But we need to be a bit more precise than that when we do our safe system assessments, a bit more refined, because I just showed you 3 crash types and they were basically all with passenger vehicles, and there's more complexity to that. So what we created, and I pushed this into the Austroads, a few Austroads guides as we're doing some updates, but is a general, and this is general indication of a few more crash types and the speeds that they happen, and sort of what are the results going to be. And of course, it's a gradient result. It's not like, if you're going 39 kilometers per hour, it's safe, and 41 is unsafe. No, like it's going to depend on so many variables, but generally we can sort of think of things in this way. And little, spoiler alert for some later modules, you can see that we start to actually put some numbers to this and get some quantification around this. We'll come back to that later. But you can see different crash types. Yeah, we can see the addition of cyclists and cars, and we can see heavy vehicle involvement and things like that. Okay. So, yep.
Sorry, I might ask a quick question on that slide. Is this why there is talk about changing to 30-kilometre zones for pedestrian areas? I believe this is happening in Germany.
Yeah, yes. So there's a lot of push for 30-kilometre-per-hour speed zones, and certainly their alignment with safe system principles makes sense. I just showed you that sort of exponential kick up after 30 kilometers an hour for passenger vehicles striking pedestrians. So we know that there's a really critical speed around in there. And if we are able to get travel speeds below that 30, we just have a significant reduction in trauma for any crash that does happen. You also lessen the likelihood of crashes. Now, yeah, the Europeans have been on sort of that 30 or lower for a long time around pedestrian crash possibility, and Australia is starting to integrate some of that. We're seeing different trials of area 30s and more movement towards that, and this has been one of the fundamental reasons associated with that. Great question. Prize for that person, because you ask good questions, you get rewarded. Okay. This diagram has, it's the bane of my existence. It really annoys me, this diagram, not because it's wrong, okay? What it is it's a crash causation diagram from, well, this one happens to be from the 2003 Kimbler study, but there's lots of these crash causation studies out there. And what a crash causation study does is it gets a whole lot of real-world crashes and analyzes them in excruciating detail as to what happened, why it happened. They do these massive root cause analysis diagrams, and these are exceptional researchers. They do wonderful work, and I am absolutely not questioning the validity of the studies at all. But why this is the bane of my existence is the way it is used. Every one of these crash causation studies comes out with road user error being somewhere in the order of 90 to 95% of the cause of crashes. This one, the 2003 one, just happened to be for drivers, so it's drivers, but it works for riders, for, So the reason this really, grinds my gears is that this is given to people who, are starting their journey in road safety. Maybe they've got a ministerial position, or maybe they've got a policy position, or maybe they're and they go, well, we know what the biggest cause is. We need to fix that. Let's go hard at making humans better. Now, the challenge we have with that is the hardest thing for us to change, right? It is the least sustainable in the sense that just new ones of these humans keep coming into our system, and you need to start all over in that, as opposed to just fixing the system around it to be safe. Now, I'm by no means saying ignore humans, and there's a lot we can do, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that shortly, but just understand that we need to think about this in a completely different way and say, no. Of course human failed, because that's part of being human. Now, why did our system, A, let that happen, B, make it result or let it result in death or serious injury to our community? Why was that not just a panel beater or something like that? There's lots of complexity to this, but I'm trying to sort of keep it simple. Now, Austroads, this, I should have referenced Austroads out of this one. They had these sort of little driver inexperience sitting outside with a bit outside the system. Now, to me, I would pull those just straight in. Like, their justification was that, driver excess, somebody driving 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way on a motorway is not inside the system. And I say, well, It is inside the system because death and serious injury was the outcome, and we have an insufficient system. The system should have kicked in, as in, when I say the system, I mean the vehicle should not be able to go that speed. The vehicle should have intervened when it realized it was going the wrong way down a motorway. Like, immediate vehicle answers to those. Nothing there that's high-tech technology. Stuff's been around for more than 20 years. You could have absolutely done all that. Like, we just need to think of that system style approach. But the other thing important to note here is that human error in the transport system is something that is multifaceted. It's not as clear-cut as that example I gave with the 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way of the motorway, or the ice addict driving hard through the residential streets, or the like. It actually comes in a lot of forms. And we've got slips as laps, mistakes, unintentional violations, and deliberate violations. The media would, if you just listen to the media, you'd think that everything is deliberate violation, that very intentional act to break rules and go, take that risk. But the Centre for Automotive Safety Research out of the University of Adelaide did a big study on this, human error in transport, to understand that really, if we draw a line here, we see about 30%, maybe a little bit higher, and certainly a little bit more depending on exactly what your area is and the like. But 70% sits above the line here. That's a death and serious injury. If you just do it for death, it actually goes up a little bit more like 35% under the line. But so what I'm saying here is that the majority of death and serious injury on our road network is people generally going about their business, not making sort of premeditated, deliberate violating acts. Exactly how you draw that line and where is interesting. You can read the 300-page report on that. But it's really important to understand this, that generally we see death and serious injury for people just going about their business and being distracted, falling asleep, other things happening, and that's the bulk of our road trauma. So this is about the time you're going to get a little stretch break, and you're going to have to do a few things though. We're going to give you a little task to just sort of consolidate a little bit of that thinking around traditional approach to road safety versus safe system, where we're trying to move towards. The way we're going to do that is with this little mix and match exercise. So shortly a poll is going to pop up on your screen, and what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, the traditional approach was, say, victim blaming, which was to say, well, no, they should have been concentrating more. They should have not fallen asleep, right? To a safe system approach, which is, one of these other options for that. Now, some of these could go to multiple spots, so don't get overstressed about it. It's about consolidating your thinking around the safe system. So we'll get that up shortly. And there's the poll that's popped up. You're also going to have now 4 minutes to, I'll give you 5 minutes all up here. Do the quiz, have a stretch, fill your coffee up. We'll be back in it in 5 minutes. Pop any questions into the chat as we go. I see there's a question in there, which I'll answer when we get back into it. In now 4 minutes, 50 seconds. Give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end the poll. And I'm having a quick flick through there. I'm going to just actually, I've stopped sharing that because I'm going to do it on the screen. I think it's a bit easier to run it from the screen here. A few could go to a few places, as I said. It was more about consolidation of thinking, victim blaming, Well, we're recognizing human error and trying to minimize the consequence and understanding that shared responsibility from that, the system perspective. Road user education and compliance. Well, that effort to create a forgiving system is getting a lot of focus. It's not to say that road user education and compliance will be ignored altogether. That's a fundamental and a supporting element, but we need to think about the that effort to create that forgiving system. So crash reduction to thinking about consequence and severe injury minimization. 4 pillars: action independently to a joint interaction and optimizing the safety outcomes of that. And that balance between safety and mobility. So just keeping things moving and killing just enough and seriously injuring just enough of our community that we're comfortable with, to saying, well, safety is paramount and we can go as fast within that safety envelope as is appropriate. There's a quote here that I like, and then I'll jump into that question, which is, we need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It's unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which simple mistakes will no longer kill or seriously injure people. So it's a good little quote, I think, from Ian. So Dean's made a good point around sort of thinking about the hierarchy of control and administrative measures associated with sort of humans, as opposed to the more concrete engineering style interventions associated with roads and vehicles. So any of you who are sort of more thinking along those lines of safety hierarchies from that perspective, hopefully that makes a bit of sense to you. So thank you. Dean gets a prize too. Okay, let's have a chat about this example. Did we hit the record button again?
We did, Ken. We're all good.
Oh, good. Thank you. Right. Let's have a chat about this one, the Melbourne Highway. Okay, this is a central barrier system. You can see there in a narrow flushed median, so wire rope safety barrier system. Before this went in, it was a road with lanes in each direction separated by a white line or a couple of white lines. Now, in the planning and development and design of this barrier down the middle of the road, tell me, what do you think were some of the challenges that the project team faced in being able to actually get this project on the ground? What were some of the things they faced, be that technical things or stakeholder things? What challenges in the planning and the design and the like of this road? Let's see, just pop them into the chat, and I've seen a couple have come in already. I'll show you a little bit more of the road as you're thinking about that. There's another little bit of that road. Okay, let's have a look. Gee, okay, we're getting some great comments in from people. It sounds like some of you have tried to implement this sort of thing in the past. You're coming up with lots of good things here. Okay, let's have a look here. So, okay, extra road space required. Was widening needed? So that one came in from Peter. Peter can have a prize there. Hayden on showing his technical expertise here. Hello, Hayden. You're going to get a prize for this one. So the wire rope barrier deflection. So when a wire rope barrier system struck, it deflects, and that'll actually deflect a little bit into the into the opposing lane. So that one was an interesting one, and certainly one that was brought up. Many design committee meetings associated with that. So prize there. James in there with motorcyclists and motorcyclist concerns. So prize for James as well. I better stop giving out prizes because I'm going to give out prizes to everybody, I think, because all these are absolutely wonderful. We're seeing the cost implications, people saying, you know, are there enough people being killed here to warrant this investment? You can't overtake anymore. Understanding the strategic alignment of the road, maintenance of the barrier system itself, maintenance of the existing, you know, road. So there's potholes, how you can't contraflow vehicles, breakdown, maintenance crews. The list goes on. So yeah, we've done very well there in terms of identifying sort of lots of the different challenges associated with something like this. Now, the reason I bring this one in and I get all of that information is to say that our traditional approach to a project like this would be that the developers, the planners, the designers and the like, and the project managers come in and they do this. Then they get a road safety audit undertaken. Now, the road safety audit identifies risks. That is what the road safety audit is there to do. You hand your design over to the auditors. They come back with a report of all these issues, and lots of the ones that you've identified there and pointed out will be listed. The auditor's mandate is not to justify the project at all, right? They're just there to pick holes in it. So what we ended up with was a slight cycle of road safety audits actually hampering the rollout of what is fundamentally good infrastructure, good safety improvement, due to the identification of this risk and the way people were receiving it. They thought, well, this is a very high risk project. Well, actually, the reality is this reduces risk so dramatically for road users of this road. Okay, and then there are those issues that need to be worked through, and they're very important to work through, but they shouldn't be hampering the project. But a safe system assessment actually does this. It quantifies what are we expecting to get in terms of risk reduction for this project, and then goes into some of these other things that we might need to work on. So you get an independent report that can actually help justify some of these alterations to roads that have been like that for 70, 100 years more. Like, you know, that's what it's looked like. So, these median barriers in these narrow flush medians are doing a wonderful job in reducing death and serious injury. They come with some of those challenges, which we need to be respectful of and understand that for some road users and some stakeholders, these are very important things to them. But we really do need to understand that we've got to make fundamental changes to operating roads with just a center line and vehicles opposing each other at 100 kilometers an hour and just hoping that they all stay and do and operate perfectly. So this one got hit not too long after it was installed, and one of the users involved in this incident called up the region and said, hey, I'd like to speak to whoever put that barrier in, and the engineer on the other end of the phone thought, oh, I'm going to get shouted at here. But they actually just wanted to thank them. They said, thank you. I think your barrier saved my life. And that engineer was smart enough to get the comms people and say, I think you should talk to this guy. And they created a little video, which we've popped into the learning management system in today's module. It's just a 2-minute video. And it really, to me, encapsulates sort of nice safe system infrastructure thinking. Somebody's made a mistake. They fell asleep. They left their lane, but the infrastructure just made it so that was a property damage, not a death or a serious injury. Now, there was a question in there. It seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, no, it is. It's probably disappeared from your screen, Ken. The question was, you mentioned earlier that the federal and state governments have adopted the safe system approach, but not so much local governments. Why do you think this is, and what can we do to promote safe system thinking to local government?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, definitely a prize-worthy question, because I think at a national level and a state level, even okay, so let's break this down. The bulk of travel is on the arterial state network or national network, but the bulk of the actual road in terms of lane kilometers is on the local network. So you're concentrating a lot of the exposure on the arterial network, which lends to more intense risk through exposure. So the clusters of crashes and things like that. And so traditionally in road safety, it's been the states trying to sort of adopt altered infrastructure and federally adopt infrastructure because of the bulk of the crashes in areas that can specifically be treated. However, we see 50% of road trauma these days on, at least, changes a little bit jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but generally about half of the road trauma is occurring on local government managed roads, but that's very dispersed, which makes it extremely challenging. But so you got that one, which kind of meant that the states and the feds were in really focusing on road safety earlier and adopting safe system. Also, we've got, of course, the just lack of resources in local governments, where we see a lot of local governments out there. They have one person who sort of takes on road safety as a responsibility in amongst, facilities management or other tasks. And so it's very hard to sort of proactively move things forward. And it takes that, particular drive from an individual to do that. So it's a real challenge from a resourcing perspective as well. And also just a capability and understanding just the fundamentals of safe system. And again, there's a resource issue with that and having, people skilled up in that. So there's a whole lot of things happening at the moment. Certainly the federal government's investing in capability capacity building for local government. There's a lot of talk about how local governments can share wonderful case studies and achievements and inspire others. There's talk about how to get sort of consultant help through other means to local governments to move sort of safe system thinking along. So there's a lot to it. It's a really valid point, something I think over the next decade we'll see a lot more of the states and the feds working to support local governments to build their own capability and capacity within safe system. I've got a moth attacking me, but
buzzing around you.
So great question, thank you. Certainly prize there for that question.
Thanks, Ken. I've got a question just on the slide that if you could just pop back on the barrier slide. So just with those barriers there, how much time and cost would be required to repair barriers like that? There's an assumption that it would be quicker. It would be quicker and cheaper in comparison to a W-beam barrier.
There's a fair bit packed into that question. I mean, so there's some whole of life analysis of barrier systems and understanding those sort of things. To be honest, I wouldn't these days use a wire rope safety barrier system in this location. Back in the day when this was being designed and deployed, we didn't have as much access to flexible W-beam systems. The reason for that is, nuisance hits and the like have some serious impacts on wire rope systems, whereas a W-beam system, a flexible W-beam system as well, can withstand some more nuisance hits before needing to have repair. There is a little bit of a benefit in terms of wire rope systems with the replacement of posts, but you can also get that sometimes with flexible W-beam systems. But there's a lot to selection of barrier system beyond just just the maintenance. I mean, it's a big aspect of it. I can put in a little plug for our 2-day road safety barrier design course, which I think some of you have done, where we really delve into that. My colleague Jamie Robinson, who's our technical lead, he really talks a lot about that. Okay. Now, we are going to spend most of this course talking about infrastructure, and we can't, though, talk about infrastructure as it's some isolated features. There's certainly people using that infrastructure and different vehicles using that infrastructure and speeds that operates at. So we really need to holistically understand some of the fundamentals and basics of road users and vehicles and speeds, and even post-crash care, which is another element of the safe system, which isn't talked about as much in Australia. But, what happens after a crash, and how do you quickly get medical assistance to people that have been involved in a crash? But I want to give you some fundamentals of each of these road users, and they sometimes get used in safe system assessment, some of this, the stuff that I'll present, sometimes not. It's good stuff that you should know anyway. But let's talk about road users. I mentioned there the limitations we have and understand about what we can expect of humans, but I want you to know that the safe system is not ignoring road users and trying to get them safer. And we know that education, encouragement, enforcement, and entry into the system, and I'm going to call it graduated licensing or licensing systems, all have the potential to continue to improve road safety. If we talk about education, okay, some just very quick takeaway points on what works in road safety education, what improves outcomes. We know that, of course, educating young kids is good. They take on that information, and they'll even feed information back to their parents if you want, their little Trojan horses for messages around seatbelt wearing and those sorts of things. So you can instill a good, road safety culture early on. When people are young drivers starting out their journey, they are at the highest risk, and we know some things that work are really giving them the time with a supervising driver to understand how the road network operates and what works and for them, like where risk comes from and those sorts of things. And yeah, that supervising driver time is the most beneficial in terms of road safety. A couple of quick ones here. Putting young drivers onto advanced driver training courses where they learn to get out of high-speed situations and high-speed braking, that makes them more likely to be killed or seriously injured on the road. That's right, I said more likely. Okay, it is one of the best research things you'll find out there in road safety. But the reason for that is that they come out of it with a heightened sense of confidence and take more risks and believe that they'll be able to use these skills to get out of that. And, they might get a little bit of a reduction in risk from some new skills, but is absolutely swamped by the increased risk-taking behavior. So that's one. The vehicles we provide young drivers, often you're giving them, often they get the worst cars from a safety perspective, and they're the highest risk road user. But really that time out there on the public road network is where we see the best benefit. The other thing about sort of education and changing behavior and people's perception and understanding of things is it's complex when it comes to road safety. Let me explain using this ad campaign that was done by the TAC in Victoria. And you can see there that we've got the guy texting, and then if you text, your kids will text. Okay. The reason this is a good way to approach sort of behavior change and sort of education is that it understands the difference between individual risk and collective risk. And I'll explain that by, if you take this driver and you say to them, if you text and drive, you're more likely to be killed. He will say in his mind, he probably won't consciously say this, but he'll go, nah, I only do that when it's safe. And I've been doing it for the last 20 years and I've never had a crash. That's not true. It's not relevant for me. And to a degree, he's not wrong, because the individual risk, so his risk of his chance of being killed or seriously injured in a road crash associated with texting is minuscule. However, if we take all of the people texting across a state or across a country, and you add up all of those minuscule risks to what we call a collective risk, it's big. It's a big risk, right? But we are talking about, to this person, about collective risk, and they're hearing it as individual risk. But as soon as you extract that and say, if you text and drive, your kids will text and drive, it just resonates. Right? They don't want their kid doing that. And so they will be more likely to stop, at least when the kids are in the car. This plays out very much the same in things like speed limit reductions. If you are planning a speed limit reduction from, say, 100 to 80 on a road, if you go out to the community and you talk to them about this is being done to reduce your risk, they will just not believe you. Unless they're a cyclist on that road or a pedestrian on that road. But for the driving public, they just won't believe you. And you'll hear all of that usual stuff. I've been driving this road for 40 years. I've never had an issue, and now you're reducing the speed. It's all those other people, those hoons and those idiots that are the danger. Why you... Okay, and it comes back to that collective risk. They're actually, their odds of being killed or seriously injured are minuscule. And by reducing the speed to 80, it becomes a little more minuscule. I mean, they can't perceive that difference in a lot of those scenarios, but the collective risk is significant. So if I'm working on a job that involves speed limit reductions, for example, the last thing I'll do is talk about individuals' risk of being killed or seriously injured while driving. I'll talk about their kids, that they're always interested in that. And I'll say, we all have to, slow down a little bit because we've got, people like your kids who we've got to try and make it safer for them. I talk about the protection of wildlife. There's a good study out of Tasmania that showed that people were far more accepting of lower speed limits to protect wildlife than they were to protect humans. I mean, and that goes on into the being able to blame a human, but you can't blame a kangaroo or the like. So protection of wildlife, I'll go with vehicle emissions. You get less emissions at 80. Some communities are, more resonate with that. You get better climate change, better urban air pollution impacts. You see, I'm not going with individual safety. So these sorts of ways of thinking about it's important. Okay, what works? Education in road safety throughout the whole of somebody's education through school is very effective. Combining with other partner activities, police and the like, very good. Support for community education. This is important for us we have a lot of the community who are quite engaged in wanting to improve road safety. Our responsibility is to ensure that there's an evidence base to what they're doing. The thing that I just weep at is that we often see community groups putting their time and their money and their efforts into things that there's good research and evidence to show it doesn't work, or even worse, goes the other way and makes things worse. Some ones that I talked about: advanced driver training, taking kids to the morgue and saying this is what will happen to you if you don't behave on the roads. That doesn't work. It's shown not to work. the only people that actually gets behavior change initiatives to and real personal change are the safest natural young people anyway. And it just, you have some serious challenges and disturbs them significantly. So we know that that's not, so that we've got a lot of research and evidence we can support and make sure community are targeting the right things. Graduated licensing is simply letting people into the system in a graduated way. So having restrictions when they start, lots of restrictions, and easing them off as they get less risky. Targeting parents or any other especially motivated group and ensuring that they are actively involved in the safety of their kids and putting controls in place. And I'll talk about network or sort of programs that change the way people see the road network. I think I've covered off most of what doesn't work. Fear tactics. So it's a bit like the morgue one. Fear tactics don't tend to change individual behavior. You will put shock and awe campaigns out there in road safety, not necessarily to change an individual's behavior, but it is more to set a platform for legislative change. So if you are, for example, going to put a drink driving legislation in or change something in that, fear tactics can work as setting that platform. But if you are expecting to scare people into behaving well, you're unlikely to get any change. Sorry, you'll get change, but from the best behaved segments of the community. Skill-based driver training I talked about. One-off events, now you need to be coordinated with this, thinking about how it plays out. Driver simulators, there's nothing yet that we've seen from any research or evidence that's really showing the evidence. Now that is a big evolving, changing all the time. So yeah, I'm happy to read evaluations. I'm going to stress here, independent evaluations. This is, there's been some things that have popped out and you go, well, yeah, you were paying them to write that. So that's, anyway, membership or participation in car racing clubs is a bit like skill-based driver training, same thing. They just get increased confidence, take more risks. And information-only approaches. Again, information-only approaches can be helpful for legislative change or the like, but don't tend to get that behavioural change that we want to see. Okay, so here's a little diagram. This is Victorian data, but and these are crashes over a period. I can't remember exactly whether it was a 10-year period or not, but learner drivers, so that's where you've got a supervising driver, very low crash numbers. Soon as they're into their probationary, it skyrockets, and then it sort of goes down and then plateaus into fully licensed. So this is used often to justify the graduated licensing system, saying, oh, well, we've got to put more restrictions here and then ease off some restrictions and then ease off some restrictions. I tend to use this in a completely different way. And this sort of plateaus off. And you can do this by vehicle kilometers traveled as well, and it still sits about the same. But essentially, I say we don't get much safer ever than somebody in their first day of driving. Now, that becomes an immediate thing to say, well, anybody who's trying to convince you that driving skills is key to improving our road safety, it doesn't make actual sense. Okay. We need a base level of skills and control of the vehicle, but as soon as you go any beyond that, it's not what the issues are. There's so many inherent other things. So it's a good way to sort of dispel that myth. And you hear it all the time. Oh, the Germans who have, the best driver training and they can, have autobahns and everybody's fine. Well, first of all, that's wrong. Autobahns are horrific in terms of road trauma. And they're like, people equate autobahns to gun control in the US in terms of it's just like part of the fabric and culture of Germany, and they, like everybody knows it's absolutely horrific, but they just can't culturally change that. So they're, people always going thinking it's about, skills and drive training. It's not at all. Anyway, I digress. I think encouragement is underutilized in road safety. We need to look at more encouragement techniques, incentivizing programs. So that's where you basically pay people or reward people if they do safe things, as opposed to just hitting them with the big stick. Advertising as part of a specific behavior. So just the drive safe campaign is somewhat meaningless. You be specific. You say take a break every 2 hours of driving, or you always drive under the speed limit, or whatever it is, or it's a limit, not a target. So drive to conditions, or these sorts of things, rather than that generic. So generally, comedy works really well for recall. That means, people remember the ad. Does it change behavior? That's a hard thing to actually draw out from the research. But I think in the learning management system, we've put a number of the really comical ads around road safety, which are quite smart in terms of, yes, they're funny, but they actually get you in a sort of thinking about those safety. And we're looking more and more to change the culture, get people questioning why we're just accepting death and serious injury on the road network as part of the cost of doing business, essentially. Well, we've got to challenge that. And so you see ads out there, grabbing onto some of these principles. This one, it's actually a New Zealand ad, but South Australia's used it. I think New South Wales has used it as well. You see other people make mistakes. Okay, we're not saying you make mistakes, other people make mistakes. So it's starting to understand a little bit about that individual risk versus collective risk. The Victorians created Graham, which is a life-size thing that looks scarily human when you get there and have a look at Graham. But it's trying to get people to question the forces in order to survive on the road. Designed, that's what you need to look like to survive the everyday forces that are imparted on the road. We haven't evolved that way. Have a Google of Graham if you have not already done that or gone and visited Graham. Fascinating stuff. I'll take questions in a minute here. I'm just going to talk enforcement. So enforcement is a very important part of our system as a whole. It's one of the things that can give us the quickest reductions in trauma. It takes a lot of resources, and it's that sort of unsustainable one in terms of you always got to be pumping it in. Like if you can set your infrastructure up to manage it, okay, that can be more sustainable and lower cost overall. So there's a bit of cost challenges here. Strategically deploying what we have and utilizing technology better is where we're going to be moving. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But just the absolute basics of enforcement is there's two deterrents. So we've got specific deterrence and general deterrence. Those are terms you might have heard of. Specific deterrence is if you have been fined for something, been caught doing something, and then you're whacked with the fine and whatever else happens to you, the theory is that you will not do that again. General deterrence is that you could be caught doing these activities. Now, the brilliant minds around enforcement policy techniques and all understand that you need both specific and general deterrence, and visual presence is a really important one in that general deterrence effect. So understanding that it's out there, and also randomization of that really helps on the general deterrence. So New South Wales is in that just putting flashing lights and whistles and big things to say there's a speed camera coming up. Well, yeah, okay. Well, that is so directly specific deterrent at that specific location, you've lost all of the general deterrence effect of you could be caught somewhere. So that's why the road safety community say, well, there's a point to randomized speed enforcement. But technology is going to just really transform us here. We have the ability to do point-to-point speed cameras, as many know, where you get a number plate, photo of the number plate at one point, down the track, a photo of a number plate, what's the average speed, and you can enforce that way. Of course, we have red light cameras and the like. Vehicles themselves, though, can do a lot of that and have been able to do a lot of that for a very, very long time. And in-vehicle enforcement, I think, is again another untapped so we have personal controls that can be put in place. So this is my key. That's Ford's one, where you have different keys. So you give your kids one key that controls the maximum speed. Traction control's always on, and actually you can set the stereo volumes and those sort of things. So you can sort of control the vehicle with different keys. We have alcohol interlocks, which are going to blow into it and be 0 in order for the car to go. So there's in-vehicle controls, but speed enforcement within the vehicle is the technology's been there forever. That's 20 years ago, I think, in my VicRoads car, where we had an intelligent speed assist, and it was tracking what speed zone am I in and beeping at me if I went over the speed limit. And then I get back to the office and I could have a report of every point on the network that I exceeded the speed limit. And that's been around for 20 years at least. We could start deploying that, at least, for recidivist speed offenders who people who just can't control themselves. We could be, centrally monitoring them and those sort of things. The privacy lawyers just have a field day on this, but it's ridiculous. Anyway, I digress. I do want to give one story before I take any questions. And it was back here. I just think that the Swedes trialed at one point Speed Lotto, and I think that was a really neat way of incentivizing campaigns. So Speed Lotto is essentially, because you're taking a photo of the number plate of each vehicle that goes through, you fine any vehicle that is going over the speed limit, and any vehicle that's going under the speed limit, well, you've got their details, they go into the draw to win all the money off the speeders. So to me, that's a beautiful incentivizing campaign, dismissing immediately any revenue raising, and just sort of naturally getting people to do what you want through that incentivization. It's a good little good example. Now, where are we at, Marissa? Who are there questions?
We do have a question. In New South Wales, L and P plated drivers can only drive at reduced speeds on rural roads, but in Victoria, they can drive at the posted speed limit, thus keeping up with the traffic flow. Which is the safest, in your view?
Okay, it's an interesting one. It's out. There's a lot of debate about that. So I think the Victorians have looked at it on a number of occasions, and they believe that the speed differential challenges present slightly more risk than the advantages you get from that reduced speed. So the speed differential being, all those situations where there is, a fast driver and then the slow driver and those sort of things. Now, I think the studies were possibly a bit limited to only looking at that, as opposed to the wider benefits for understanding speed and the importance of lower speeds and those sort of things. But yeah, that's what I understand. I must admit, it's not one of the ones I feel that I'm an absolute expert on. I can dig in some more on that. So maybe I'll just take a note and see what I can dig out and find some information. Okay, thank you. Was there more? No?
No, all good.
Okay. Got some key points there, which we've covered off all of. Now I'm going to pick on, and I'm going to move a little quicker here just to set this platform around vehicles and vehicle safety features. So certainly we know that ANCAP and people identifying safety features in vehicles is something important, and that some vehicles are safer than others. I think ANCAP, so the star rating of vehicles, showed that safety is a sellable commodity, and used to be thought that, color, number of cup holders, shape and speed of the vehicle were the only things that could sell, but safety is certainly part of that mix, which is great to see. But I think you need to understand the limitations of vehicles. So 5-star frontal crash is done at 60 kilometers an hour. Side impact pole test, actually, I'll give a prize for the person who can guess what speed is the vehicle slid in at, and the dummy here has to not have enough force to basically give it an acquired brain injury, something they're going to be debilitated for the rest of their life. Like, what speed are they doing that crash at? Okay. Oh, good. Lots of guesses coming in. So the answer is, in recent years, it's gone up from 29 kilometers an hour to 32 kilometers an hour. So Marissa, you're going to have to find out who was closest to that. I think there was a 35 in there. So, I mean, so understand what we're saying there is that a 5-star vehicle, we can't assure you that crashing that, somebody is not going to get an acquired brain injury at anything more than about 32 kilometers an hour. Okay, some of them will absorb a bit more force than that. The side of a vehicle is horribly engineered for force. The front is pretty good, and crumple zone airbag, seatbelts, and things like that. But the side is really not good at all. We are identifying the protection of people outside of the vehicle is also important. So vehicle features such as pop-up bonnets, airbags over the bonnet are now commonplace in new vehicles. And that's part of the crash test protocol, that we're going to make sure that we're protecting those vehicles. This one happens at 40 kilometers an hour, the pedestrian crash test. But when do we get to this time where the vehicles have just taken over and they do all the driving and they make all the choices and mistakes are non-existent? Well, pretty much non-existent. It's a long way off. It is a long way off, even despite having little autonomous vehicles putting around the Port Shore or Waymo taxis in San Francisco and the like. We're a long way off this in Australia, and they're a long way off in the US as well. And we will see some levels of autonomy continuing to be deployed, and it'll integrate slowly in. Well, integrate in, but yeah, it's analyzed a lot by jurisdictions as to why are we bothering doing infrastructure upgrades when the vehicles are just going to take over anyway. And well, you can plot that out over time and just see the catastrophic death and serious injury amounts over the next 30 years or so if you just sit on your hands and wait for the vehicles to take it over. And we don't, we're not going to accept that. There is really important strategizing around, well, what do you invest in that the vehicles are not going to pick up in the short and medium term, and where do you best deploy your resources? So things like Edgeline on some of the rural road network can be an exceptionally valuable thing to do, because more and more vehicles are starting to enter in with lane keeping technology, but they need that Edgeline to assist with that. So you can do a bit of that thinking as well. So yeah, the vehicles will have more and more braking by themselves, which is good. And even that one that knocks the leg off there, well, that is going to assist because the vehicle sort of slowed during that process. So it's a less severe crash. Marissa, questions while I jump on to safer speeds?
Yeah, we do have a question. Ken, what are your thoughts on the idea of not displaying the 50-kilometre speed limit sign? In Tasmania, there is the idea that it does not need to be displayed.
Yeah. So the theory on not displaying 50s or 100s is that those are our default speed limits, and that you have that as a base, and then only where there is a speed zone would you alter that. The technically we have 2 speed limits and everything else is a speed zone. The reasoning behind it is that not displaying it is that people should be driving to the conditions. That's the theory. And you don't want to actively put the 50 with a red circle or the 100 with a red circle, because people may target that as a speed and believe it's a safe speed, whereas the conditions may be varied and altered and that they should drive within those speeds. Now, that was the original theory behind it and why people still run with that. Okay, we've deployed more and more speed zoning, and we have so many speed zones now that I think that message is kind of lost, and that displaying the actual speed and having it as an appropriate speed limit and people being fully aware of what the speed limit is more appropriate than just essentially utilizing legislative confusion as a way to get people to act safely. So that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. We've got another question.
Yep.
The increased popularity here in Australia for the larger US-based vehicle types at odds with safer vehicles in the framework?
Yeah, yes, to a degree. So certainly the larger vehicles entering the fleet come with safety implications that are not within the current sort of framework that we're thinking. So yes, vulnerable road users, for example, and vision for vulnerable road users, and the crash mechanics of that. Certainly understanding where on a vehicle people will strike with their head especially becomes important to the end outcomes. So in one sense, like I say, well, we shouldn't let these vehicles in. The other sense, I say, well, that's, okay, that policies, whoever's making those decisions, what would you need to change in the road environment so that those vehicles could be there and it all operates safely? And that would be some significant changes to the way we operate the system. We've certainly, with some road safety infrastructure, been able to account for that, such as barrier systems. So some of you who know that the change from the NCHR P350 protocol to the MASH test protocol, well, that's predominantly as a result of larger vehicles. They've just said, well, we're now having larger, heavier vehicles hitting barrier systems. We need a larger test vehicle, and we need the barriers to be designed for larger vehicles. So they're just going, well, that's what it is, so let's change the infrastructure around it, as opposed to saying, well, we shouldn't have these larger vehicles on the network. So I can see both, and it depends where you are sitting in terms of your ability to influence change. I hate those big vehicles, and I'm a cyclist and a walker, and I'm just like, how big are these bloody trucks? But yeah, I recognize some of the challenges we're facing, also associated with just jumping up and down and getting angry at it.
Thanks, Ken. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, and I'm going to speed up a little bit because I want to give Marissa time to show you the learning management system, make sure you can do your quiz. Okay, speed 101. Maybe it's just physics 101, but I'm going to talk about it as speed 101. Okay, speed and impact speed. So travel speed and impact speed are not a linear relationship. Let me explain that. 60 kilometers an hour. A vehicle is traveling on 60 kilometers an hour, and somebody steps out from behind a car at 45 meters away. They take some time to see them, process that information, lift their foot up, put it on the brake. Then they start braking, and that's the traction with the road and the braking system. They will just touch it at 45 meters away. So let's go up 10 kilometers an hour to 70 kilometers an hour travel speed. Instead of hitting just 10 kilometers an hour more, okay, they hit at 46 kilometers an hour. So that shows you it's not a linear relationship. Then you add on to that the increased severity levels, the kinetic energy equation that has squared in. We end up with a fourth power relationship for fatal crashes. And we have a third power relationship for serious injury crashes. So what does that mean? It means that a small increase in speed will have big impacts on the chance of a fatal crash occurring, and a little less on serious injury and a little less on other injury. But our most severe crashes are the ones that are most influenced by travel speed. So if we can get a little bit reduction in speed, we get some serious benefits. Speed limits are very controversial, but speed limits aren't our only way to achieve appropriate speeds. But there's some community sentiment towards speed limits, which shows some challenges. That's Tasmanian data. But yeah, it's often reflected in the rural road network. Urban is a very different story. We can utilize a lot of wonderful factors there. But I want to show you this, which I put into the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed and speed management. Biomechanics of injury, that's set. Like, humans can handle what humans can handle, and we're not changing much. We're not evolving quickly in terms of physical force. But you can take that, and you can say, well, what have we got in terms of the vehicle fleet? What are our road and roadside conditions? And what have we got in terms of people and what safety gear they're wearing and the like? Then you can just filter that through an appropriate speed, and you will have a safe transport system, assuming you can ensure people stick to the speed. So speed is our controlling element in all of this. And we don't tend to utilize it in its appropriate manner, but we should be setting appropriate speeds for appropriate roads. It is the silver bullet in road safety. People say there's no silver bullets left in road safety. There is, and it's the appropriate management of speed, but it comes with all sorts of community entrenched views and values. So we can, though, get appropriate speeds or speed reductions and well, speed increases if the infrastructure is there and it's appropriate. But you can influence this through infrastructure and or speed limits. So the ability to create road environments that naturally slow people down, self-explaining, is highly effective. Explaining why there's a speed limit in place assists with acceptance and compliance, and protection of vulnerable road users is generally well accepted. So pedestrian, cyclists, elderly children, all very well generally received. And we're going to see more and more deployment of variable speed limits that change based on particular points in time of risk or the like. This is Strip Shopping Centre, but you can do it with side road activated. So if there's a vehicle coming in the side road, you can lower the speed limit on the main road to address that point of risk. And again, in your notes, just a few key points around speed and speed limits. Okay, quick prize. What is the international formula for risk? Anybody got that? What's a formula for risk? Risk equals something times something. Anybody want to have a crack at that for a prize? Sash is on it. Likelihood times consequence. Beautifully done. Likelihood times consequence. What is the chance something bad will happen? And then what's the magnitude of badness? That's the international sort of definition of risk: occupational health and safety risk, financial risk, environmental risk. It's all what's the chance of bad thing and what's the magnitude of badness. In a safe system assessment, we go a little bit further here. We actually draw out of likelihood. We draw exposure and likelihood. Exposure is the number of people exposed to a crash. Likelihood is that sort of individual based on the infrastructure in place, and consequence is still consequence. So we will be looking at these three elements as we undertake safe system assessments. And just to show you some infrastructure that alters these different things, exposure here, like they've blocked off this level crossing. They've closed the road essentially with a mound of dirt on that side and this side, but there is no exposure to crashes there. Nobody can enter that area of risk. Or a pedestrian could, but car, right? Likewise, if you can completely separate vulnerable road users from vehicles, there is no exposure to vehicle to vulnerable road user crashes there. There's no vulnerable road users mixing with the vehicles. Okay, you might have a cyclist to pedestrian thing to think through, but likelihood is about like what's going to stop the crash happening. Okay, and we've got a lot of things out there. We've got sealed shoulders, audio tactile, edge line, center line, geometric design, lighting, skid resistance. Now the list goes on. We've even got things like signals, traffic signals, or signs, lines, all of that. But the severity of crash is influenced by speed, angle, type of road user involved. And you can see here slowing vehicles on the conflict on the approach to a conflict point. That's going to lessen the severity of the crash. A barrier system, you hit a barrier system and it's less severe. It's still a crash, you're still hitting something, but it's less severe than hitting a tree or a culvert or rolling over. I'm going to hand it back to Marissa now. She's going to take you through the learning management system. You've got a short quiz you're going to have to do today. I've only given you 3 minutes. Sorry, Marissa.
That's all right. Let's do a quick share screen. Hope you've all been able to access the learning management system. Here it is if you haven't seen it yet.
We're just seeing your desktop.
Oh, are we? Okay, let's go over here. How's that?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Yeah, here's the introduction screen if you haven't seen it yet. We've got a few, the link to each webinar is here. We've got some course information documents in this one, like the agenda and some other things you've already received, so you can refer to them at any time. Our introductions page, where a bunch of you already said hello and posted in your comments there, so thank you so much. Lovely to hear all about you all. We've got a 10-minute safe system video here if you'd like to have a look at that one. Some extra resources that Ken will refer to throughout all of the webinars. Feel free to have a browse. Yeah, heaps of documents in there for you to have a read of, and also some fact sheets. We've got a bunch of, this is a link to our our website where we have a bunch of fact sheets there for you to have a read of. Module 1, quiz for today. So yeah, in the Module 1 area, we've got the presentation here for you, a PDF of all the slides. We have some videos here in a folder, quite a few that Ken has already referred to today. So feel free to go in and have a watch of all of those videos. Same with this Mythbusters episode. As for your task for today or for this module, we've got a Module 1 quiz. Just simply have a click of that one and attempt the quiz. And you've just got a series of mostly multiple answer questions for you to answer. Not too difficult there. And then, yeah, so if you just complete that, we'll receive notification. You do need to achieve a 80%. Ken's already run through that 80% completion rate. So it's 8 of the 10 questions correctly in order to pass the quiz. So yeah, hope you've all been able to have a look at that one. Once again, training, please email training@safesystemsolutions.com.au if you do have any issues with anything at all. We are here to help.
And log in a little bit early before next session, chance to win a prize. Get in contact with me about any questions. Otherwise, looking forward to continuing this conversation with you, in a couple of days' time?
Yeah, what's today? Thursday.
See you Thursday.
Bye-bye.